did you do?
She became awesome. But not really. If you've been following me for a while now, you know I'm a big fan of anthropomorphic creatures. As if that would surprise anyone, I'm a lonely unemployed fat man with a YouTube channel. Of course I'm a freak as well! Okay, that's enough self-deprecation. No holds barred, I think these creatures are amazing, and I'm very happy that they're ever so slowly creeping into more respectable media than niche internet communities. No offense to furries out there, but I do not like the fandom, and there are many reasons for that. But this time specifically I am thinking about how proprietary it tends to be. Like, if a furry character exists outside of the fandom, generally the fandom will start to consider it part of the fandom. And if someone within the fandom creates a furry character, generally their only trait tends to be being a furry character. It's like artists aren't even trying to move beyond the fandom and try to create a character or a setting or a world that has mass appeal outside of the fandom. I love monsters and creatures, but leaving them at their appearance is a disservice. It makes them only appeal to people who already like their appearance. Putting their design into context elevates the characters to the next level and makes them more than a pretty horrifying body. Sorry if I went off on a tangent, but I think this is part of the reason why it's so rare to see anthropomorphic characters in major media. Cheetah is a rare exception because she's one of Wonder Woman's most important adversaries, with years of character development and history behind the two. So let's remind ourselves of what that was. There's been many Cheetahs over the years, but at the very beginning there was Priscilla Rich. She would dress up in a cheetah-themed suit and duke it out with Wonder Woman for whatever reason was convenient. A bit more effort went into her niece, Deborah Domain, who was brainwashed into becoming the second Cheetah and donning another cheetah suit. Then the Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, and both characters bit the dust. But they were popular enough for fans to notice, and they wanted them back. The thing is, the Crisis on Infinite Earths, it worked as a reboot of the Marvel Universe, giving new backstories to the villains and the heroes. So the thing is, Barbie-esque women in catsuits, they were a dime a dozen in comics, so how to make this one more unique? Let's turn her into a monster. Cheetah, as we know her now, is an archaeologist who became the champion of a tribal god, imbuing her with inhuman power and twisting her body into an abominable twilight between woman and animal. But even as a human, she was self-serving and conceited, and when her team of jungle explorers was killed by bandits, she chose to imbue herself with the power of the tribal god, not for revenge, but to gain immortality. As she was not a virgin, the god's gift became a curse, where her human form leaves her racked with pain, and her bestial form hungers for violence and blood. And people who actually read comics will realize what I just did was some serious cherry picking, as most of the time Cheetah doesn't look nearly this inhuman. In fact, most of the time she looks like this. Not a lot of monster in that one. But the point I want to make is, Cheetah was refined over several years in dozens or maybe hundreds of stories until she took on her current form as a tragic but malevolent adversary of Wonder Woman. It wasn't like someone at DC went, "Hey! Our Greco-American dominatrix isn't kinky enough. Give her an animal she can wrangle. And give it tits!" Cheetah came to be Wonder Woman's antithesis. While Wonder Woman is a semi-ancient Amazonian warrior princess fighting for justice for all, Cheetah is a corrupted modern woman fighting against injustice against herself. Embittered by her lot and the constant foil that is Wonder Woman, she became a monster both figuratively and literally, left alone to struggle with her voluntary segregation from humanity. So having thoroughly averted your expectations of what this video was supposed to be, I thought I'd bring you back and talk about her design. No, I never said the design wasn't as important as context, just that you need context in order for the character to be interesting. Okay, so first thing first. Overall design? Not bad at all. When I first heard that Cheetah was going to be in 1984, I was very worried about how she'd look, as I am not always a fan of how she looks in comics. I was very worried they were going to do what was done in Cats and have Kristen Wiig dressed up in a lime green body stocking, add spots in a computer and call it a day. But they actually went in and gave her a body that balances her human features with animal ones. I especially like the legs. They're digitigrade and thin like a cheetah's, but thicken and fill out to become more human. This anatomy does of course raise issues with functionality. Digitigrades are quadrupeds because standing on your toes is a chore and a half. Not to mention it's a constant balancing act, and I wish she had a longer, heavier tail for counterbalance, but considering most humans can stand on their toes for a few minutes, and she is now presumably imbued with divine strength, it's not something I'm too concerned with. Moving on, her arms look very muscular, even through her fur, and I like the way they thin out and seem even longer, which, again, is very reminiscent of a cheetah. But I do not like her hands at all, they're far too human, especially considering she appears to have claws. Most people know that cats have claws inside their toes that they can protract when they want to. Yes, cats have protractable claws, not retractable, but that's besides the point. The claws are hidden inside the sheath in the cat's toes, and they're connected to muscles in their leg that controls these the movement of the claws. The thing is, human fingers, specifically those fingers, yeah, they are way too thin to accommodate for that, in addition to the already pretty complicated system of tendons already inside human fingers. So I can only hope her claws aren't retractable from a design standpoint, but even then, these long, thin digits, not made for quadruped movement. I realize, of course, there are mitigating circumstances, such as magic solves everything, and there are people who are just naturally bendy. There are people who can bend their fingers all the way to touch the back of their hand without breaking them. So maybe the god Urskataga gave her some of that feline flexibility, but seeing her run around on the tips of her fingers, I just keep waiting to hear that fateful sound of a snap. Also, remember what I said about her not having retractable claws? Have you ever torn a nail out of your finger? Well, imagine that nail being this long. Ouch! So I've talked about the arms and legs, let me address what's in between. There really isn't a lot to say based on what little we can see, other than it looks like a normal human torso. But the proportions are ever so slightly reminiscent of a cheetah even here. Her pronounced upper body dips down into a smooth curve along her very flat stomach, looking a lot like, well, a cheetah. And comparing the animal with the characters making me realize just how stupid her name is. But that's neither here nor there. Something I realized when breaking down her character is just how clever the relationship between shapes and forms is used in her design. And what I mean by this, a shape is... well, it's a shape, it's an outline, it's an area, it's a flat surface in a certain, well, shape. It doesn't have any depth, and a form does. If a form is a square, then a shape is a cube. If a form is a triangle, then a shape is a pyramid. You see what I'm saying? And what I realized when looking at her over and over again is she has the shape of a cheetah, but the form of a human. Maybe it's an odd way of phrasing it, but from one side her shape reminds mostly of a cheetah, but from another side she looks human. If I use her thighs as an example, cheetahs have relatively flat thighs with a large surface area, and a very distinct spring-like shape. Human thighs tend to be more ovoid and compact depending on how much they work out, and with their anatomies being so different, this raises a lot of problems when you try merging the two. The designers for Cheetah seems to have gone around this problem by making her thighs human from the side and feline from above. You see how her thighs looks completely human here, but animalistic here? I get the same feeling looking at her torso, like it's animalistic from the side and human from the front. I'm not entirely sure what to feel about the distinction being so clear, but maybe you can tell me if I'm the only one who sees this. Am I crazy? I don't know, maybe. I spent a whole day trying to break down the design of a cat's reject. And that comment brings me very neatly to the biggest complaint I have about the design. What with the reverse Egyptian god thing? To be fair, even a cursory glance at the different looks Cheetah has had in comics makes it clear the artists really were inspired by the source material. There are elements of all of Cheetah's most iconic designs. She is humanoid and feminine without being sexualized, monstrous without being repellent, powerful without being hulked out. It's a very good design for her body. But with her head remaining human, it looks incomplete. Even with all its positive aspects, it still comes off like she's wearing a suit, but couldn't find the mask. Why someone decided not to anthropomorphize her head? I have no idea. I can only speculate. Maybe it was an executive decision from the producers due to bean counters and surveys. Maybe Kristen Wiig simply wanted people to see her face. Maybe they couldn't properly merge her face with the cheetahs and make it look good. I mean, the CGI already looks pretty shit. I mean, it looks kind of like a game cinematic circa 2010, but yeah, I don't have an answer to this question. All I can tell you is, I don't think this looks good. First of all, it just looks silly. It reminds me of Priscilla Rich and her skin-tight fursuit, which may be an intentional nod to the character's evolution, as Crisis on Infinite Earths wasn't released until 1985, the year after the film is set in, but it's still not a good look. Second thing is, turning characters into monsters serves several functions. It's dramatic, it's representative of their inhumanity, but it also gives a reasonable explanation for their sudden physical prowess. Most comic book characters simply have superpowers for no real reason. How is Superman able to hear calls for help from across the world? Because fuck you, he's Superman, that's why. Cheetah's strength, speed, agility and tolerance all comes from the changes to her physique. Leaving her head human leaves her without elevated hearing, sight or smell. Not to mention... You mean to tell me that noise came out of that mouth? But anyway, I'm just sitting here complaining. I'm supposed to be an artist, can't I do any better? Well... no. But I know professional artists could. So, if I would have one of them do something, what would I have them do? Well, off the top of my head, Year of the Villain special, variant cover. That's all that's missing, as far as I'm concerned. If she had had that head, I'd be a happy camper. Thank you all for watching. I have been Cole Scratches. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend, and I hope you... Oh yeah, I have a DeviantArt, a Twitter, and a review channel where I review found footage movies. Subscribe to that as well. Bye everyone!